Okay, welcome everybody. Thanks for giving of your time again today to get some of your, or many of your questions that we've collected over the last week or so after we announced our change in plans. We are here to make sure that we have been able to at least touch on some of those things that you're worried about and so forth. So just a couple housekeeping items to start. First of all, we'd like to welcome our elementary principals, our middle school principals, Kyle Anderson, our Assistant Superintendent of Business and Facilities, and also members of the teaching and learning team. You get to see, many of us are going to participate in the conversation today, since they have been an integral part of creating our plans and actually have led the work with their building team. So they're going to talk a lot about that today. We will be going through building schedules today. We'll be talking a little bit about cohorting. We'll be talking again about safety and cleaning and transportation. We'll also be addressing questions about athletics and extracurriculars, all those sorts of things. What we will not be doing today is responding to the questions in the chat. At the end and the Q&A, you're going to find out how you can get your feedback and your questions answered by your building principals. So we're going to ask that you listen to the entire presentation right now, and then you'll actually ask your questions to your building principals via email at the end. So we'll talk to that if there's something that we don't touch on today that you have concerns about or questions about. We'll give that information to you at the end of the presentation. So just so you know, we will not be monitoring the Q&A. We will just be going through the presentation to answer those many, many questions, the good questions that we've heard from several of you. So thank you for participating once again, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So just briefly, and I know many of you, if you've been in our other webinars, have heard us talk a lot about why we've made this shift from what we'd originally proposed, which was 2 days of in-person instruction and then 3 days of remote learning. And so many of those things really were based on the conversations that we had in our classroom to cloud planning teams within each of the buildings. And we know that why the spring was so successful was because our teachers had established relationships with the students. And we won't have that in the fall. Simply because we haven't been in person yet. And we haven't been in person since March. And so we want to make sure that we have the opportunity to build relationships with students in a more continuous format. So allowing to have 4 mornings a week or 4 afternoons a week, allow our teachers to build those relationships, and then there's then a consistency in instruction. If you think about our original plan, which was the 2 full days of in-person and then 3 days of remote learning, by moving to 4 half days, we are not necessarily, although somewhat, extending or increasing the number of instructional minutes. But what we're really doing is that providing that routine and that structure, particularly that students in kindergarten through 8th grade need around school. If you know that every morning you're going to school but 1 day a week at this point in time, and that every afternoon you're going to school but Wednesdays, that provide that consistency. And you won't have those large gaps between that in-person instruction. And we felt that was very important. We heard loudly that our remote learning responsibilities for you as families were a lot. We asked you to log in and do Zoom every day. We asked you to certainly to sit next to your student and help lead that instruction. And so we want to make sure that there is that responsibilities are lessened. They're things that your students can access without a lot of help on your part. So that was certainly something we heard from our families. Flexibility to provide supports and services. You're going to hear about that today, about the ability for us to bring in our students with special needs on a more consistent basis, actually for full days of instruction. Same is true for our English language learners, and also certainly for our students who are receiving reading and other interventions as well. So also, we talk about safety. The 4-day model negates the need to navigate lunch, which was going to be quite a challenge for us as we tried to socially distance and or have lunches delivered to the classrooms. The opportunity for recess, again, where it's very difficult to keep first graders away from each other when they go outside to play, so that took care of that. And then obviously something like passing time at the middle school, where you would have 400 students or 500 students moving across the building at one time, or even in smaller groups, is very, very difficult to manage. And so we are following, again, the governor's required and strongly recommended statements that are within her return to learn plan for phase 4. And when you socially distance, those were all those things we had to consider. By going to the 4-day model, it eliminated the need to plan for those things. There are shorter blocks of time. It is difficult for students to wear masks, and we're going to talk about masks later in the presentation. For a full school day. This allows students to wear their masks, to get very intentional instruction for a shorter period of time, and then to be able to go home and do their remote learning. And so we feel like that will help to really focus what's happening in the classroom. Cloud Care can be offered at your home school rather than having to travel to OHMS, which is what our plan was initially. Instead, students will be able to stay in their home school to receive their child care and to get their remote learning lessons taken care of and so forth. So we feel like that was a positive. It's consistent K-8. We knew that it was very important that for our families that we had consistent scheduling. We didn't want middle school operating on a different schedule than K-5 and then having to figure out how we were going to manage all of those things. And so as you as families, how you were going to get students to on 2 different schedules. So we wanted that as well. And that Wednesday deep clean day is very, very important. Kyle will talk again today about the difference in sanitizing in between blocks of time of students and cohorts versus what our plan is to deep clean our buildings on Wednesdays and on the weekends. And so we feel like there is no perfect plan, but certainly we've considered all of these factors when making this decision to move to the AM and PM cohort model. What we obviously would like is to open the doors and come back to school as normal on August 26th. But quite frankly, that is not going to happen. That's not going to happen for many, many people. If you saw the governor's press conference yesterday, she clearly indicated that it is highly likely that we might return to remote learning either to start the school year or certainly thereafter if our numbers don't decrease. And so we need to make sure that we have plans that we can ensure that students are safe, that staff are safe, and that we are providing that high level of instruction. And so we wanted to make sure that you saw what the background was and kind of the reasons that we made the decisions that we did. And so those are really the factors that we considered as our classroom to cloud planning teams, kindergarten through 8th grade. I'm going to turn it over to Susie Eisner now, our associate principal at Orchard Lake Middle School. She did an excellent job kind of defining all these words that we use all the time and maybe not recognizing that you as people who don't live in our education world might say, I don't really understand what that means. So Susie, if you kind of talk through this vocabulary, that would be excellent.
Thank you. And Deanna, I just want to say as a parent in the district, as a resident in the district, and as an educator in the district that I heard from a lot of families that relationships between parents and kids were strained during the spring, and this model hopes to restore that school-child relationship and parent-child relationship in addition to everything else. So we use the letters C2C to refer to our cloud to classroom transition, and that's just our move from that total virtual back to classroom. We hope that it's just one shift, but we know that we might be doing that again and again depending on the phase. Our instructional plan is tied to the phases that Michigan is in. So phase 1 through 3, we will be all learning remote. We hope not to have to do that, but it could happen. Phase 4 is where we're currently in, where we can come back to brick and mortar schools, but it is with current restrictions. And phase 5, we will go back to a regular scheduled day. A cohort, and you'll hear that term a lot today, are the group of students that are all attending the building in the morning or all attending in the afternoon. Blended learning is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be combining remote instruction along with face-to-face instruction. With the remote learning, some of it is going to be synchronous and some of it is going to be asynchronous. These terms are being thrown around a lot these days. Synchronous means that the instruction is being given remotely at the same time that the students are receiving it. So it is live and interactive. Asynchronous means that it's been taped ahead of time. And then you're seeing it later. So we're recording this presentation and families will be able to watch it asynchronously later in the day. Canvas is our new online learning management system. It's actually not just for online. It's replacing our Google Classroom and will actually give parents a lot more access to see what teachers are assigning, what instruction they're providing, what what videos they're using to support their instruction, and where your child is at. So that's going to be a real help to families. Cloud Care is what we're calling our kind of tween time for middle school, and used to be called Latchkey years ago. We're going to provide care for your kids if they're in the afternoon cohort and they need care morning to midday. We're going to provide that. If they're in the morning cohort and they need care from the time that morning ends all the way until 6:30 p.m., we're going to provide that. And then Lakers Online, as a distinction, is a West Bloomfield school that will be 100% remote regardless of the phase that we're in. So while our brick and mortar schools may phase in and out based on where the state is, Lakers Online will maintain remote instruction.
Thank you. Excellent job. So we'll obviously share this presentation as well, but we do recognize we use a lot of terms that people don't necessarily know. So thank you for that. And hopefully that helped as well. I'm going to turn it over now to someone who's going to talk about our blended learning cohorts and our schedule.
That's me. Hi, I'm Amy Hughes. I'm the principal at Abbott and Orchard Lake. And I can't believe that Susie didn't use this analogy, because she said it several times and I'm going to steal it. No one wants to be back to school more than us and our teachers, but Susie equates it to, we realize that everyone wants to be back 5 full days. That's the best for students. That's the best for parents. And but we know that we're offering you 2 choices: a half-eaten apple or a stepped-on candy bar that has been still in its full wrapper that has been refrozen. So those are the 2 choices you get. Not great, but we tried to come up with something that is, in this situation, best for students. And right now we're currently at the middle school working on 2 different schedules. One is a phase 5 back to school, full-time 7-hour day. At the same time, we're also creating this blended learning schedule that is actually being hand scheduled. So across the board, K-8, back in school, will be in school for 4 days a week. There will be 2 cohorts, and I think Susie said this definition. Cohorts, we talk about AM or PM. So cohort A, if your student is in that, would attend school in the morning. So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, they would participate in remote instruction. And then for middle school in the afternoon, they'd be doing their electives. Cohort B, they would be coming to school in the afternoon, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Fridays. In the middle school, they'd be doing their electives in the morning. All students will have remote instruction, K-8, on Wednesdays, so that the buildings can be clean, sanitized for Thursday, Friday. So other considerations that we took in were students who need additional instructional opportunities. We're going to be talking about how we're going to give them interventions and supports, and our self-contained programs, our AI, CI, and EI programs. They'll be meeting all 4 days for full days. I'd also want to say that we have been fortunate enough when we got together with our task forces, which again, K-8 met several times through June and July. And we were really starting to work with that 2 full day instruction model and 3 remotes. And as we were talking about how we were trying to make that work and what things we would have to put into place, and we were coming up with some difficult things to try and solve, we started talking about how could we get students in school more. And when the high school went remote, that enabled us to have some conversation around being able to get students in school in the morning and in the afternoon. And we felt, like Susie said, it is really difficult when your students are at home learning remotely, especially the little ones, to be learning on their own. And so when we came up with this model, central office was awesome about letting us pivot last minute, getting out the communication to you. We know that it's difficult for you. We know that you're working around childcare issues and your own jobs, but please know this is not an easy decision. Honestly, easy would be going back 5 days a week, and all those recommendations that the governor is asking us to do, wearing masks, social distancing, we really would not be able to do during all 5 days. So this model we think is the best of what we're working with right now. And hopefully, if you have any questions, that you contact your individual principals about that. So more about the middle school to come in later slides.
Thank you, Amy. So yes, we are very proud of our work that our teams have done. Our Classroom to Cloud teams were consisted of parents and teachers and support staff and our building leaders working together. And again, while certainly we would love to come back to school and 5-day in-person instruction regularly without all these provisions that we need to plan for, we know that this plan is really going to work well for students and provide all that consistency. So we appreciate the hard work of these teams and that countless hours they've spent managing the schedule, working on the logistics, and making sure that we're going to do the very best we can for our students. But if you're not comfortable sending your student back to school at this point in time, we do have our online option, which is Lakers Online. It is our West Bloomfield teachers. It is our curriculum. We have ordered supplemental materials. They actually are arriving, I just checked, so they'll be in later this week. So we'll have things by the time we have orientation and you pick up your Chromebooks. If you're doing Lakers Online, we'll have support materials for you as well. You have an access to a wide variety of courses and our specials and our electives. There are certainly just some electives at the middle school that don't lend itself very well to online. And that's just part of those choices we have to make as parents. If you really are concerned about sending your kids back to school and this is the best option for you is to stay in Lakers Online or move to Lakers Online, there might be some electives that we just are not able to offer. And we're sorry, but there are just some courses that don't lend itself as well to online. Multiple opportunities for live instruction that you're going to see as we walk through the schedule later, because that is available online. You can see what we've devised for Lakers Online schedule. At this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. West, who's going to walk through the Bell schedule so that you can see what that looks like for our elementaries and middle schools.
Morning, everyone. Thank you for being here with us today. So as you can see, because of the AM and PM cohort that we decided to go with for our in-person instruction, we did have to make some adjustments to our Bell schedules. The timing is going to be, there's going to be 2 hours and 40 minutes of instructional time that'll be live instruction with your students. And then there's 90 minutes in between the AM and the PM cohort. So as you can see, our middle schools, Abbott and Olms, they will start the AM cohort at 7:50 a.m. It'll run till 10:30. Those students will then be either picked up or bused home. And the PM cohort will come in at noon and go until 2:40 p.m. Doherty and Chico similarly will be at 8:25 a.m. and run until 11:05. Those students will go home, and then the PM cohort would come in at 12:37 and leave at 3:17. And then Roosevelt and Grechko and Scotch will be the latest Bell schedule, starting at 9:25 a.m. till 12:05 for the AM cohort, and then the PM cohort will start at 1:37 and go until 4:07. So we've worked hard with transportation to make sure that we can provide an option for all families, whether they be an AM or a PM cohort, to try and either have the students bused in or working with your building principals as to how the arrival and the dismissal procedures will work. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Long, principal at Doherty, and he is going to walk us through what a day may look like at the elementary level.
Good morning, everyone. Scott Long, principal at Doherty Elementary. Thank you for attending and participating today. I'm honored to be here. And I'm just going to dial in a little bit on what it'll look like at the K2 level in terms of a day at a glance for students when they're in in-person instruction and when they're in remote instruction. And what I want to dial in on here first is Monday and Thursdays, what you're going to notice are very similar in terms of their schedule. And then Tuesdays and Fridays are very similar as well. And what we were trying to do here is really prioritize the big ticket items that are going to get us the most bang for our buck with student instruction and student learning. And so in each day, we're going to have time to check in with the kids and connect with them and perform a morning meeting where we really kind of cater to those social emotional needs and just checking in with how they're feeling, build those relationships for about 10 to 15 minutes in the morning. And then we're going to transition over to Reader's Workshop. And the mini lesson is going to be super tight and focused. It's going to be about 10 minutes, no more. We don't want to waste a ton of time with teacher talk. We want to be able to get into the active learning of guided reading groups, independent reading and kids actively learning with their reading lessons. And so you're going to get about 35 minutes of guided reading and independent reading time. Then we're transitioning into math, where you're going to see a Bridges math lesson, small group instruction, workplaces as well. And that's going to be about a 35-minute block of time. Then we're going to shift on Mondays to a read aloud or shared reading. And it's going to be about 15 minutes long. We believe it's really important for kids to hear text read aloud to them and also be involved in shared reading. And then wrap up the day on Mondays with a writer's workshop mini lesson. And then again, that's going to be super tight and focused, no more than 10 minutes, because we believe where it matters is the kids actually getting in and writing and getting feedback from their teachers. And that will wrap up the day for Monday. You'll notice that Thursdays look exactly the same as Mondays. Tuesdays and Fridays are a little bit different. And the significant shift is with the phonics and word study instruction taking place instead of the read aloud and shared reading. And then at the end of the day, a science and social studies hands-on lesson as opposed to the writer's workshop mini lesson. So that's basically what you're going to see in terms of in-person instruction in this 2-hour and 40-minute block of time. It's going to be a sprint where we're extremely intentional with the instruction and the learning opportunities that we're providing for your kids. And I appreciate the fact that we'll be able to see our kids 4 days a week face-to-face and keep, like Deanna talked about earlier, that rhythm going, the routine and the ideas, and having text in front of them with teachers in front of them to support them. If we shift to the next slide, it'll just give you an idea of what the remote responsibilities will look like. And I just want to focus on the fact that anything that is done remotely is going to be meant to complement what the kids have done in class. It's not something separate or in isolation. It's all synced together. So you're going to see at most of remote screen time 2 hours a day. So when the kids go home, they're going to have access to Reader's Workshop mini lessons that are in video format. Talked about asynchronous lessons like that Susie had mentioned earlier. There's going to be some word study and phonics practice, some time for reading, also some time for a flipped lesson with social studies and science, and they're going to have access to their specials for at least 30 minutes a day as well. So you're going to see media, art, PE, and our music class as well. So there's going to be great opportunities at home for kids to, complement what they learned throughout the day, and you'll see those same type of responsibilities on Wednesdays. Again, where it really matters is that in-person instruction, and that's where the kids are going to get it. So that's all we have, unless Sally wanted to add anything for the early elementary that I might have missed.
Everything looks really good. And we've worked as a team, the elementary principals, very hard on designing this with our C2C teams. And we've come to this, and it's honed in. We know what we're doing, and we're looking forward to starting on the 26th.
Perfect. Thank you. Sonia, we'll flip over to you, Ms. James, and I'll go to your slides. Obviously, it's the very similar. We included in the presentation all the buildings. So when we share this, you can see each building's by level, what that in-person and remote learning instruction will look like. But Sonia's going to talk about upper elementary. So Sonia.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Deanna, and thanks everyone who's helped work to put this together. To our families, if you notice that the format for the upper elementary and the lower L pretty much mimics, it's pretty much the same. If you look, I'm going to focus in on an in-person day at Chico starting at 8:25. We will start with that social emotional piece, working to connect with our students at 8:25 to 8:35. Then going right into our mini lesson, like Mr. Long said, just being very laser sharp with the time that we have our students in person, because that's really what's most important in terms of having that direct instruction with our teachers and teachers being able to interact with our students. So that 8:35 to 8:45 is our Reader's Workshop, our mini lesson. Then we go right into our 8:45 to 9:20, that guided reading and independent reading instruction, looking at the rotation of our groups being 10 minutes long. Then we also look at that 9:20 to 9:55, our Bridges math lesson, small group instructions at the workplaces. We want to make sure that we've given our students some solid, intentional instruction so that when they're working independently at home, they're able to they're able to do the independent assignments based off the instruction that's been given that day. We rotate back around 9:55 to 10:10. Again, for that read aloud, that shared reading time, that's where our teachers will read read to the students, have some engagement, questions and answers, some discussions. Then we'll circle back to our writers workshop, our mini lesson, and then we'll finish up our day with our independent practice small group based off our writers instruction, and dismissal at 11:05. Then we go into the afternoon, which would be, this is for the kids at cohort A that were AM. This is what their afternoon would look like at home. We have a total of about another 2-hour time limit that students should be engaged with their independent work at home. There's that flip readers workshop, that mini lesson, where students will have that independent, that independent time, as well as looking at the lesson for the following day. Some phonics work independently, number corner workplaces, math fact fluency practice, that's another 30 minutes, a flipped science lesson, and then 30 minutes embedded for the our specials, which gives us another total of about a 2-hour time limit for our students to really follow up with the lesson from the day, complete their independent work, as well as prepare for the lesson on Tuesday. And then we would bring our students, our cohort A will wrap up their day, and then we would mimic that same schedule for cohort B, which would be the afternoon. So really trying to maximize the time that we have our students during the day, as well as giving them enough independent work that will not be overwhelming, but will be supported with the lesson from the day. And that pretty much wraps up a day in the life of an upper elementary, unless there's something that Jim would like to add to it. Other than that, that would be upper L.
I would just want to thank you. Make sure that people understand, because again, there's another word that we use quite a bit, is a flipped lesson, a flipped lesson. So what that means is we would show either in Canvas would be a screencast or a video that a student might watch. There might be a, I wouldn't necessarily say a worksheet, but maybe some work where they needed to complete, anything where they would be getting some instruction at home that would prepare them, either support what they had learned in the morning or prepare them for the next day. So when we talk about a mini lesson where they might, in a flipped setting, there's a video that they would watch where they would watch it at home in Canvas. They would do whatever the practice was and went with it, that would prepare them for the instruction for the next day. If you were in the afternoon cohort, you would watch that in the morning, and then that would prepare you for that instruction in the afternoon. And so they're just going to be staggered a little bit, but everything you do at home is going to reinforce what you're doing in class during that in-person instruction. So that is, while it's asynchronous, it is aligned to what's happening with in-person instruction. So these are not separate tasks that are not aligned to the standards, that don't follow what's happening in the classroom. They're not just independent practice for the sake of independent practice. These really are things that will help your student be prepared for that in-person instruction time. So it's imperative that they do it. And so that we want to make sure you understood what flipped meant. And obviously we'll work with all of you and as parents to understand, okay, if I need, in the AM cohort and I need to go home and work on this work, that's going to prepare me and support for the next day when I come back in on Tuesday for instruction. Or if I'm in the PM cohort, I'm doing my lessons in the morning, they're going to get ready for me in the afternoon. And so that's how that's going to work as teachers plan. And as parents are prepared, and our kids are prepared to walk back into the classroom as well. So we wanted you to see what that looked like.
Thanks for that clarification, Deanna. I actually froze a little bit, so I appreciate you following up with that. Thank you.
No, I know, again, one of those words we used all the time, right? So
yes.
That's perfect. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to the middle school now, who's going to talk about what their blended schedule looks like.
Okay, so in this model, students in 6th, 7th, and 8th will attend in-person, in-building core class instruction, core class meaning language arts, science, social studies, math, 4 days a week, and attend remote instruction the opposite part of the day for 2 40-minute elective classes 4 days a week. So students last spring requested their electives, either art, orchestra, fitness, choir, band, STEAM, computers, Spanish, musical theater. And we're currently working on where those electives will be offered in the morning for those in the PM cohort and where they'll be offered in the afternoon for the AM cohort. On Wednesdays, again, the building will be closed to students and staff for deep cleaning. Students will need to check their Canvas, which again is replacing Google Classroom, for screencastify videos and directions from teachers to complete their tasks by 2:45 p.m. What we don't want happening on Wednesday is it's not a free day. Students can't sleep in until 1 or 2 o'clock and then, expect to get their work done in like 15 minutes. We really do want them to have a scheduled time where they get up, they're doing their work, and the tasks must be completed by the end of the day, 2:45. The cohorts, students will be assigned a cohort, either AM or PM. Within the AM and PM times, they'll be assigned a learning community. The learning community is their 4 teachers. And then within the learning community will be their learning family. So who are the students in that classroom? So learning families will be determined by the student's math class. And that'll allow us to continue to offer different levels of math. The block of time between 7:50 and 10:30 for the AM cohort and 12 to 2:40 for the PM cohort will be divided according to the plans dictated by their 4 core teachers. Again, math, science, social studies, language arts. So in this plan, teachers move, students do not move. Instruction will be very targeted. Teachers are currently working on how to best deliver and provide the best learning opportunities and experiences for students with this, given this amount of time. Currently, we are also discussing how to divide our cohorts. We know many families have reasons for preferring one cohort over another, and we're working to balance transportation, class size, course offerings, cloud care numbers, siblings, and alignment between buildings. So please be patient with us. We are working on that, and that information will be coming shortly. In fact, we plan on having by early August, hopefully this information will be coming to you, and student schedules, course schedules just before school starts. The middle school right now is currently working on 2 different schedules. We're working on the phase 5 in-person 7-hour-a-day schedule, because we are hopeful that will happen at some point. And then we are hand scheduling the cohort model. So we ask for your patience. Any questions that you may have, please feel free to contact us directly. The answer may be right now, we're not sure, we don't know, but please know that we are working on it right now, 24/7, we are working on it.
My turn. I'm Lisa Graff. I'm the Associate Principal at West Bloomfield Middle School at the Abbott campus. And I know a lot of families are concerned or have questions about athletics. This truly pertains to middle school and high school families, as we really don't have competitive sports at the elementaries. We are governed by MHSAA, which is the Michigan High School Athletic Association, and we are following them. And right now they're saying that we are going to be able to offer some fall sports with precautions. And so we're planning on doing that. Normally, the high school will start tryouts and things like that in a couple weeks. We don't really start middle school sports till the first day of school. So that gives us a little more time because MHSAA has actually said they want to come out with a new guidance document today. So we're eagerly expecting that. But our plan is to have some kind of middle school athlete night, whether that be in person, small group, virtually for parents, and then hopefully begin our fall sports season, the sports they allow us to have on the first day of school. Now, the first day of school, I think, is a virtual day, so we probably wouldn't do anything that day, but we'll make sure to get middle school parents a lot of information. We just want to make sure that you know that athletics is a big component for a lot of middle school kids, and our fall sports, most of them are not cut sports. So that means it's like cross country, as many kids sign up. And so it's not anything that we have to have tryouts in August or anything like that for. So we'll get more information to you soon as MHSAA also gives us information, but we want to let you know that's on our mind. And that's it, I think, right? Yes. Yes. Stay tuned for emails. And if you haven't received an email and you're a middle school or a rising middle school parent, let us know because we're sending out stuff every couple days. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. So yes, we are anxiously awaiting the guidance from MHSAA today. It's supposed to be out probably sometime around noon. And we'll obviously take our lead from whatever they say at this point in time. And we're hopeful we're going to be able to bring kids back for both extracurricular and for sports and safe manners. So similar to what we're doing for school. We want to talk a little bit about special education as well. This really outlines, this is the full program that we offer through special services from preschool through age 26. But what I want to highlight for you is that based upon your students' needs, whether that your child might be in our autism spectrum disorder classrooms, in our level classrooms, in our cognitively impaired classrooms, emotional impaired classrooms, resource room, the plan is to bring students back in for 4 full days a week of face-to-face instruction. I want to tell you that we also have been in a holding pattern, quite frankly, waiting for special education, not because our teams have not been working around the clock 24/7 to figure out the best service delivery, but we have been waiting to see if there was guidance coming from Michigan Department of Education or from IDEA at the federal level regarding how we should deliver instruction following these phases. And there's yet to be any from either of those entities. So I want to make this disclaimer. One, kudos to our special services teams who really have devised and made sure that our students are getting as much in-person instruction as possible. But also that really this could change. We certainly think that we have a solid plan. We know that that it will meet the requirements of the IEPs and provide the service that is needed for our students. But again, if MDE or IDEA and the feds issue something differently, then we will have to make a shift again. So we'll let those families know if that's the case. But right now, our plan is to bring our students in these particular areas and classrooms that have these services, whether that is resource room or ancillary support staff like speech, social work, OT, PT, etc., to bring those students in for 4 full days of in-person instruction. Everyone district-wide will be learning remotely on Wednesdays, again, for cleaning, for the opportunity for students to participate in asynchronous lessons and so forth. So we wanted to make sure that you know that our plan is to bring our students back in that have special needs and have services that they are in need of face-to-face instruction 4 days per week. And so if you have questions about that, I would suggest that you reach out to Diane Swadish and to Kim Szynski and or to your building principals who can help guide those conversations. They have done a tremendous job. They have a great IEP document that'll be coming forward about how we're going to manage IEPs, how we'll be managing MET testing, how we'll be doing all those things that are quite complex and require a lot of face-to-face interaction, and how we're going to be able to do that safely. So look for additional information coming around IEP services and timelines and those kinds of things. But this is our plan right now, is to have our students with special needs back in the building 4 full days per week for in-person instruction. I just want to remind everybody where we are with Lakers Online and kind of the deadline pieces and talk through that schedule a little bit. Because I know we still have families that are on the fence, and we chose to extend the deadline until this Friday. So the deadline for Lakers Online for in-district is Friday, the 31st. I'm going to close the window at the close of business, so 5 p.m. Friday, we will close down that application. Right now, actually, this is a day or so ago. It's actually significantly higher than that now for in-district people right now. And so we want to make sure you know that we are working feverishly to make sure that we have staffing completed, that will have the opportunity, middle school parents, to select your courses. Elementary parents, you've probably seen what typical kind of instruction will look like on those days. Same is true for middle school. You saw what will be both, and you'll see in a minute, synchronous and asynchronous expectations each day for instruction. We'll talk about Chromebook distribution and a parent orientation coming up in a few weeks as well. This is really an important factor, and I've been asked several times about this, and so I want to be very clear. This is not an in and out. So we are staffing, and we are making instructional decisions based on your commitment to Lakers Online. If you are a current student in the district, if you're a current family in the district, whether you entered via schools of choice in Doherty or at Gretschko when you were in kindergarten, first or second grade, or you came through STEAM at Roosevelt or at Abbott or at Ohms, you are considered a West Bloomfield student. So once you're in the district, you're a West Bloomfield student. If you are committing to Lakers Online and you complete that application, you're committing for the full minimum semester. We would prefer that you're committing for the full year, but you are at minimum committing for the semester, which would be late January of 2021. It is not feasible for us to have students moving in and out of Lakers Online. And so when you make that, then when you complete that application, you're understanding and you're committing that you're staying until January of 2021. You have to make that decision as a family, whether you can continue to do that remote learning and whether you feel like that's the best option for your kids. We have many, many families, obviously, who are not yet comfortable with sending their kids back to school. And I understand that, and that is a personal decision. And so we want that we can't make for you. I probably have had, I don't know, probably 40 emails about what should I do. I can't tell you what you should do. You know your kids. You know your family situation, you know what you can manage and what is just not something that you want to tackle at this point in time. We can provide some guidance, we can show you the schedule, we can do all those kinds of things, but this is a personal decision. But it is one that is going to be made for an extended period of time. So at minimum, you are committing to at least the end of January, if not for the full school year. So please don't start and then think, well, it's the middle of November. Now we're in phase 5. We're back to 5 days of in-person instruction, and I want my kids to go back to school. We cannot do that. You are committing, based on your decisions by the Friday, that you're committing till at least January of 21. So we want to make sure that that is very clear to all of you. The schedule for Elementary Lakers Online is on our website. We updated it. We also sent it out to you in our parent communication yesterday. You should have received the parent communication. It has multiple links of information. It talks about transportation. It talks about technology. It talks about Lakers Online schedules, building schedules, your parent communications by building. Please take the time to read all of those links. It's very, very important because it provides a wealth of information for you. So I just want you to see, I'm not going to walk through minute by minute, but that it looks very similar, quite frankly, to an in-person day and our elementaries. It's just going to be delivered online. So there are times for core subject, in-person synchronous, meaning teachers are live during this time, multiple times per day. If you see that, it's actually that they are live for at least 40 minutes, 4 different times throughout the course of the day. There's time for movement breaks, there's time for snack, there's time for lunch, there's time for choice, and there's independent time. The school day for those students K-5 will be 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. It's a typical school day. So I want you to think about what we did in the spring, where it probably didn't take a full day, some days, to complete the work. And there were days that maybe, in fact, you were done by noon, and students were doing other things. This is school. This is different than maybe what we did in the spring because we weren't under attendance, which will be taken daily. And that we also were counting this as instruction. We knew that your kids were moving on no matter what. This is school. So you need to make sure as families, and the same schedule that I'll show in a minute for 6 through 12, is that it is a typical school day. Notice that you need to be up and online at 9 a.m. This is not sleeping until 11. And attendance will be taken and is expected. So you need to make sure that when you make this decision about Lakers Online as a family, that you understand that it is a commitment from 9 to 3 every day. That independent time, work time, office hours is asynchronous. So that's when your child is reading or they're doing their whatever work was assigned for that day, or they're conducting a science experiment. That is not live time, but it is when teachers are available also for small group instruction and those sorts of things. Wednesdays, for Lakers Online as well, will also be an asynchronous day, meaning those students will be working independently for 30 to 50 minutes in each of those core subject areas because the Lakers Online teachers will also have a staff meeting, and they will be participating in our professional learning communities planning across the district. So they are still part of West Bloomfield Schools. They'll be continuing to work on pacing, so that actually our Lakers Online kids will be paced just the same as our in-person students as well. And so that gives our opportunity for our teachers to work with their in-person counterparts on Wednesday. So we want to make sure that you saw that as well for our elementary schedule. I'm not going to read all these expectations to you, but you'll see that there are teacher expectations and then there are student expectations. And so again, this was shared yesterday, and we'll share this presentation as well. I would like you to review those as you're making that decision and see particularly things about student code of conduct, attendance expectations, academic work that needs to be completed, and so forth. These are just some examples of what a synchronous and an asynchronous task might be within Lakers Online. So I'm just give a couple of examples. In reading synchronous, which would be led by the teacher, would be a guided reading groups. They'll do a mini lesson. There would be shared reading. There'd be discussion. There'd be partner talk within breakout rooms and anchor charts. An asynchronous would be independent reading. Kids are doing that on their own. They're viewing screencasts of mini lessons on their own. They are listening to recorded read alouds by the teachers, and they're doing some word study work. So we want you to see there's some examples of what they would be doing live with the teacher, and then what they would be working on asynchronously or independently once that have those blocks of time throughout the course of the day. The Lakers Online schedule for 6-8, in this particular case, it's actually 6-12, looks like this again. The school day is 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. The first hour of instruction for our students is at 9 a.m. And there is both live instruction time and then independent work time that are built in. One thing I wanted to point out about Wednesdays, also remote for 6-12 Lakers Online, but that we are creating a seminar course that really addresses career and college readiness for our middle schoolers. We are fortunate to have a tool that we use in the district called Zello, formerly Career Cruising, where students will create their EDPs. They'll do some of those career interest surveys. They'll there's some really awesome tools that are built in within Zello that we'll be using, as well as attending to our students' social emotional needs. We know that students need peer interaction. They need that regular schedule. They need to make sure that as you're making this decision about Lakers Online, if this is what you choose, that it's school. They're up there. They have something I did not say that was in a previous slide that I think is important. They have a designated work spot. My two boys, who are both in high school, took a summer class this summer. I learned very quickly that their bedrooms are not their best place for their learning. So there are way too many distractions that do not involve instruction. And so we had to say, nope, you have to come downstairs and you have to sit at the kitchen table, and that's where you're going to learn. If that's too disruptive for your family because you're in the kitchen or that's where your workspace is, you need to work with your child to determine where that best learning space is for them to be able to attend to their work for this period of time. So that'll be another conversation. Where is that spot in the house where we can all kind of harmoniously work and not be on top of each other, but that are going to get the most instruction and being able to focus? It needs to look like school as much as possible. And then again, same thing with those expectations that we'd ask that you read and review with your child when making this decision. I'm going to turn it over at this point in time to Amy Quinn, who is going to talk about our cloud care, which I know has been many, many questions about that as we've gone on. So Amy, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you so much. So I'll talk a little bit about cloud care and explain a few things. Cloud care, AM and PM, for all registered students will be offered Monday, Tuesday, and then Thursday, Friday at the student's home school as space allows. Then Kids Club, which would open at 6:45 and then also offered after Cloud Care until 6:30. That will be offered at the student's school as usual. Cloud Care, AM and PM, that's the time that your child is not in the in-person instruction. So if they're not in-person instruction, then they would be in the cloud. And vice versa. Families using Cloud Care AM and PM will be charged a fee to ensure that the program costs are covered, approximately $15 per session. And then the traditional Kids Club and the tween time, that charge will be the regular rates for the AM and PM care. And families will have an opportunity to apply for assistance as needed. On the next slide, I'm going to go over a little bit of kind of what that schedule would look like while they're in Cloud Care. So this is just kind of a, example, a sample, but there'd be some free time with some individual activities, arts and crafts, fun things. Then there'd be a time where the students can actually do their cloud learning with staff assistants. And then enrichment activities facilitated by community education. So that'll include some organized art, dance, creative expression, and even some STEAM activities. Then it would be the same thing for the afternoon. Now let's move on to the early childhood plan. So as you can see here, what's offered, we have a variety at different buildings. For example, ACS will have stepping stones and junior kindergarten, and then the traditional 3s and traditional 4s. At Scotch, GSRP will be offered. At Chico, there will be Stepping Stones and junior kindergarten. And then at GSRP, Gretchko, traditional 4s and the traditional 3s. And then offer virtual learning for preschool. That's an option for parents also. And the preschool will also be consistent with K-12 in using Canvas for their platform. And it will be geared right for early childhood and what those early learners need. And all materials needed for home learning will be provided. So if you have any further questions, you can contact Community Education. Thank you.
I also want to just thank you, Amy, let people know that yesterday also in that communication was some very specific information about Cloud Care, and the registration actually opens on Monday, August the 3rd. So registration for Cloud Care opens on Monday. You'll want to make sure that it asks some questions about flexibility, whether you also need Kids Club and or Tween Time. Those are separate. So I want to make sure that we're clear about that as well. The $15 per day, which is the price that it is per session, includes lunch, it includes your snack, it includes someone who's going to provide support for remote learning, all those pieces as well. So that's important to know. But Kids Club and Tween Time are in addition to, those are costs that are in addition to. Still available, still an option for families, but that $15 is just for Cloud Care, which is that time during the AM or PM cohort. Kids Club is a separate fee, if need be, for that extended care prior to the start of the school day or after the school day. So we want to make sure that you're clear about that as well. Registration opens Monday. There is information that went out in our communication yesterday about how to access that and how you would indicate whether or not you needed multiple days and what that might look like. So please make sure you are aware, and that if need be, that you sign up for Cloud Care starting on Monday. Mr. Scrivo is going to talk about our technology.
I have. I've been fascinated by everyone, and I truly appreciate the team that we put together here. The elementary principals, Kyle, Amy, Catherine, Gianna, who's not pictured now, but is always working behind the scenes as well. The elementary principals, the middle school principals, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. I get to talk about something that I think everyone will be interested in, and that's our C2C technology update. Starting the first 2 weeks of August, we will be passing out brand new Chromebooks to every single student that attends West Bloomfield schools. And that is, I think that's fantastic from a school district. I have not heard one district that's doing something along those lines. The schedule went out yesterday, so please check your emails for that schedule. There are basically 2 chunks of time. There's a morning time for pickup, there's a break, and then there's an evening time for pickup at the high school. And inside that email, there's a map, and the map is specific to where you want to pick up those computers. And that's important because we do have construction going on at the high school at this time from our bond and from different things that are happening at the high school. It seems like there's construction at the high school every year, but in this case, we want to make sure that you're not getting caught in that construction traffic. And there is a map for where we want you to pick up those Chromebooks. There is on August 20th, once you have your student's new Chromebook, there is Canvas training for parents. This is important because it gives you an outline of where you need to look for things for your kids, where assignments are, what assignments are completed, and then what assignments are yet to be completed. Google had that, and I did, having a middle school student and a high school student go through the same process through March of last year through now. I learned quite quickly what they said they did and what they actually did. So once I learned that there was this task list in Google's, I was a better parent. So there's going to be some of those things that you learn on Canvas, and I highly recommend that you take a look at that because it'll really help when you're navigating what your kids are doing at home, and especially if your students are going to be on our Laker Online. Wi-Fi hotspots will be available. Obviously, we're not going to purchase hotspots for the entire district. That would be an astronomical price, but we are going to have those for families that need them. Obviously, we're going to need to talk to you about that. You know, one of the things we joked about yesterday is we're not going to be paying for Netflix and things of those natures, but we definitely want you to have it. The whole point of giving you guys computers, getting everyone a computer, is that they have access to this education that we're providing. We want to make sure that you have good Wi-Fi. All the principals I'm looking on this page have struggled with Wi-Fi throughout this process, and it doesn't necessarily mean where you live. It's just your provider and how good the feed is. So we want to make sure that you have access to those things. I mentioned the Canvas training for parents, and that is our new learning management system, which there's going to be there's many similarities to our Google Classroom, but Canvas allows us to use our Google documents, and the transition between the two is very easy. Professional development has been laid out throughout July and August. And I feel like West Bloomfield is completely prepared to go completely online because of the Canvas piece and the professional development that we've given to our teachers, so they have a better understanding of how to deliver that platform. I have not heard that from other districts on the professional development front. And if you have families in those other districts, you should feel the same way. West Bloomfield is very prepared to go online if necessary, but we realize how important it is to be in person and build those relationships with our students. It's the key factor. And I believe that she skipped my slide, so I think that means I'm done talking. Oh, no, I'm back on. The last thing was the blended learning, the social emotional, anti-racism content and Canvas training has also been going on throughout the district. We've had several webinars that we've attended on all of these fronts. Obviously, there are many, many things going on in our communities and in our country right now that affect our students, affect you. And we want to make sure that we are offering that in-person instruction so we can deal with some of those things from our classroom to home and continue to make that connection and continue to build those relationships with kids so we can teach them how to interact with each other in a positive way that lessens these things that are happening in our community as best we can.
Thank you, Mr. Scrivo. So yes, it is important. We wanted you to see what our teachers have been working on, and they too have been working tirelessly this summer. Their professional development started in Canvas on the 13th of July, and I've been very impressed with the number who have been engaging and creating their courses within Canvas, and we'll be ready to start with all of you on the very first day of school. We will send out webinar information about our Canvas training. It's Canvas 101 for parents. It is August the 20th. You'll be able to have your Chromebook open at the same time with your child, and we'll show you how to download the app so you can have it on your phone. It is really a fantastic tool, and so you'll want to tune in so you can have access to all the things that you need in order to help to support your student, whether they're in person or whether they're learning at home on those remote learning opportunities. We're going to talk a little bit now again just about safety protocols for phase 4, and you've heard this, and so we're just going to reiterate some high points, but there is a change that we have made that you need to listen to, particularly to our K-5 families. And so we're going to talk, Kyle and I today, about the face coverings, about hygiene, about some of those spacing things. We'll do high level things around that, certainly, and then we'll talk about transportation and food service as we move through this, and custodial, how we're going to keep things clean and manage that as we move from cohort to cohort. When we initially presented this to all of you last week to our Board of Education on Monday evening, we were requiring face coverings for our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders at all times. So in the classroom, in hallways, as they transition in from the bus, etc. We have certainly been following the guidance that we've seen that is in the governor's Return to Learn roadmap. We've been in consultation with families and their concerns about face coverings for our elementary students. We've been in consultation with our teachers who had grave concerns about being masked and having students in their classrooms in kindergarten through 5th who are not wearing masks. So at this point in time, we are requiring all students, K through 8, to wear masks to school at all times. So that means when your little ones are in the classroom, they will be expected to wear their masks. And we know this is a shift or a face covering from what we had talked initially, but as we've continued to monitor, and we've obviously seen the governor speak about the importance of everyone wearing masks, we know that your kids are going into grocery stores if they're traveling with you, or they're going into other places, to the mall or wherever that might be, and they're wearing masks. I see them, and my own kids too are wearing masks all the time. we feel that it's important that we've heard loud and clear from the government, certainly from our leaders and the CDC, and certainly the governor, about how important masks are at being able to contain the virus. And so we are requiring all students K-8 to wear masks when they're in the building. And so that might be, and we'll talk about face coverings. That could be, there's a variety of things that are out there. I've seen what your kids are wearing. I see what my kids are wearing every day. That doesn't have to be an N95. It's not personal protective equipment. That's different. This is really a face covering. We have face coverings if need be, if your child has a need to have a mask or a face covering, but you certainly should send those in and come with your child as well. So you know what has worked for you as a family. You know what you've put them in, whether those are those awesome Under Armour ones that I've seen that everybody's getting now. Everybody has masks. If you need a mask and you want a designer color, it is out there. So everybody, all the manufacturers have jumped on board. If you want to do like I do and you just wear the ones that you get that are paper and you throw them away at the end, that's fine too. Whatever it is that works for you. But we are requiring, I'll say it again, over and over again, as we shared in the update that went out, that is all students, kindergarten through 8th grade, will wear masks when they are in the building, even when they are in their classrooms. Our staff will as well. And so our teachers, our paraprofessionals, our office staff, you as visitors, when you come into the building, which will only be, as we've talked about, to the main office, you will not be allowed in the classrooms at this point in time, will also be expected to wear a face covering. It is the mandate by the governor. We've talked a lot about, there are obviously various opinions about masks, as are various opinions about many, many things in this country at this point in time. But we are tasked with following the requirements of the governor's orders. And no differently than when you walk into Meijer or you walk into Target or you walk into whatever your favorite retailer is and you're expected to wear a mask, that is the exact same when you walk into our school buildings. And so please, I know you won't, and I don't even feel like I need to say this, but I'm going to. It is not our building secretary's fault. It's not our principal's faults. It's not our teachers. Please, if you have mask concerns, we understand, and we understand that some people just are not thrilled about this, and I get that too, but it's not anybody's fault in the building. And so I would appreciate if you wore your mask, that when you come into the office, that you understand that we are all in an unfortunate situation and we're doing the very best we can, but we expect parents, if they're going to be in the building, all students K-8 and our staff to be masked at all time, including when they are on our school transportation. These face coverings can be homemade, so whatever that is that you want to do. If you've got someone, I know that we have people who are making masks and using old scraps of fabric in order to do that. I am not one of those people. And then, or if you want to use a disposable one, that is fine as well. So there's a wide definition about face coverings. So we want to make sure that you understand, one more time, everybody K-8, all students will be wearing masks at all times, not just in the common areas. And obviously, if you're unable to tolerate a face covering, there's documentation that's required. And I do want to touch on this a little bit. If you really, really are, as a family, either one, medically intolerant, can't wear a mask, don't feel like your child could even go 2 hours and 40 minutes in a mask, believe me, we understand the challenge of trying to keep a mask on a 5-year-old for 2 hours and 40 minutes. I don't envy Ryan or Scott or Sally, because that's going to be a challenge. We know, but you've been practicing. They've been wearing them. We know they'll be fine. Kids are resilient and they'll be fine. But if it really is something where they cannot tolerate it, we'll require that documentation. And, or I guess in my mind, if it's really something that they can't, or that you as a family just can't embrace as the expectation, then you need to choose Lakers Online. That you have an online option. You don't have to wear a mask that way. And so that is your option if you don't feel like your child can wear a mask for that period of time. And I know that it's a touchy situation. It's a touchy conversation, but we want to be very clear about that. So if we will make sure that there is code of conduct language around dress code and what is required when kids come to school, how they need to be dressed. A mask is one of those things that we expect to start the school year in fall 2020. I just want to very generally talk about hygiene, hand washing, all those good things. In the governor's order in phase 4, if you've not read our 30-page document, it is required that we teach a hand washing lesson, we should teach that too, hand washing lessons, K-8. So you're going to see some things that come home about how we're teaching students to wash their hands. It is also expected that they wash their hands during a certain period of time. So I think it's roughly 2 hours they have to wash their hands. So you're going to see a lot about hand washing. You're going to hear about it at home. You're going to hear communication from our buildings. You're going to see those lessons as we do those things. And so we started working on signage, cute signs to let people know they have to wash their hands. Seems like it should be a no-brainer, but you know, there's lots of things we have to teach sometimes. And so we'll be providing hand sanitizer in all of our classrooms and our common areas. It is EPA approved, which means it does kill COVID. And so that will be available for our students to use regularly and scheduled times in order to do that. So we want to make sure that you know those things as well. Again, we are making sure that students are spaced 6 feet apart. We are purchasing plexiglass for our elementary classrooms and so that students are still able, or teachers are able to conduct small group instruction. Teachers should keep 6 feet away from their kids. That's probably going to be the oddest thing. You're going to have kids in masks, you're going to have teachers in masks, and you're going to be 6 feet apart. That's not our nature. We want to be close and we want to touch them and we want to look them in the eye and we want to get face to face so that we can see them. But at this point in time, we're going to maintain social distancing until we get back to phase 5 and we can move to regular in-person instruction. Visitor access to schools is restricted. You'll be able to come into the main office, but it will not be going down into the classroom. And that you will have to wash your hands and you'll have to give us some information. You're going to have to wear your mask because you'll be screened for symptoms and exposure just in case. So we have that contact tracing information should we have a positive test and we need to get in touch with you as well. We are waiting anxiously to get some more information from our public health officials, particularly the Oakland County Health Department, about how we will notify people if we have a positive test or if there is an exposure, how we will notify families around quarantine if need be, what might happen if we had to quarantine in a classroom or quarantine a building, all those kinds of things. So we will have more information coming again in the coming weeks as we get some guidance from Oakland County Health Department about how we'll communicate those things to you. And again, we're just waiting. We'll wait to see Oakland County. We anticipate that we're going to have our nurses, which are being trained by the Oakland County Health Department. We'll have 2 for a period of time. They will not be on site. So these are not nurses who are going to be there to administer temperature checks or to do those sorts of things. They'll be working remotely, but they really are helping us to provide guidance and be in communication with all of you as well. I'm going to turn it over now to Kyle Anderson, who's going to talk a little bit about food service. Just briefly, we know you've heard this before, but we want to reiterate it because it continues to come up. So we'll talk about food service and transportation. So Kyle.
Thank you, Deanna. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to parents. And I must say I have 2 high school students and we're in a different district and we've received virtually no communication from our district. So at the very least, I think that you appreciate our proactiveness in trying to communicate with all of you and really develop plans and work through all these challenges this year. So with that said, what I'd like to do is kind of talk about the operations of the school district. That's food service, transportation, and custodial services and cleaning. And our job really is to follow along the instructional team and make sure that we're able to support whatever phase we're in or whatever instructional model that we're going to use for the school year. And to start with food service, and what we did was sort of, I think Amy made mention of this earlier, we're designing our operations around whatever phase the state currently is in. So in phases 1 through 3, as you know, there is no in-person instruction. So meals will be available for pickup, similar to what we did this last spring when schools were closed. In phase 4, under the K-8 half-day model, there will not be on-site meal service. So one of the things we talked a lot about was maximizing that instructional time period in the 2 cohorts. So we will put a system in place to distribute meals. It's probably going to be on Wednesdays, and it'll be 5 days worth of meals, like a curbside pickup system. The nice thing about food service in general is that the staff have protocols already in place for when they prepare and serve meals. It's called the Serve Safe certification. The governor's return to school plan has some additional safety protocols that we will be following. And those include individually packaged meals and not sharing any utensils if we ever do get to phase 5. And we also are encouraging the use of prepaid meal accounts. So many of you already use those, and we have taken the fee, that transaction fee, off of those accounts, and we're basically trying to encourage more parents to use that service. And whatever phase we're in, we will have meals available for all of our online learners. It's Lakers Online, and certainly in phase 4 for the high school. So transportation, one of the things that we're doing this year is doing an opt-in system for transportation. As you can imagine, the capacities on our school buses are diminished. We're trying to adhere to social distancing on a school bus. And really what that means, a school bus that's rated to carry 77 passengers can only carry 26. That's every other seat, and so our capacities are lower. So we are opting in for transportation. We sent a reminder out yesterday. You should have received it via email. And we're asking that families complete that registration form by Friday, July 31st. Transportation will be a key component to determining the cohorts. We really don't want all of the bus riders in the AM or PM cohorts. We want them spread out sort of evenly from just a transportation standpoint. And I know Amy also talked about that cohort and when parents will be notified of those plans. And as Deanna mentioned, and this is a part of the governor's roadmap, that face coverings are required to be on a school bus. So as Deanna also mentioned, hopefully we're all getting used to wearing face coverings at this point. So hopefully we can follow that guidance and safely get our students to and from school. We do have clearance from the Michigan State Police to have a hand sanitizing station on a bus, and we're going to ask students to sanitize their hands before entering the bus. And of course, all of the sanitation and disinfectant that we're using is EPA registered. We will be basically disinfecting each bus before and after each route. So when a new group of students enters the bus, that bus will have been completely disinfected. Moving on, one of the most talked about topics is cleaning and disinfecting. And I just want to mention there is a difference between sanitation and disinfecting. So when you sanitize a surface, you're really limiting the number of microbes and viruses and bacteria that are on that surface. When you disinfect a surface, you kill viruses and microbes and bacteria. So our goal in meeting the governor's plan is to disinfect our high-touch surfaces every 4 hours. And this plan, the half-day plan, actually works very nicely. That 90-minute, 85-minute period between the two cohorts allows the district to completely disinfect the spaces before the new cohort arrives. We will be cleaning play structures once a day, those outside structures. And we're really working hard to train all of our custodial staff so they can be performing these tasks on time and properly. We did some time studies on what it takes to disinfect a classroom. We're planning to do a time study for one entire building and make sure, once again, that we have enough time to hit every space between the A and the B cohorts. We're also working hard on we're working with our mechanical engineers to ensure that our heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems are maximizing safety. So we want to make sure that we have increased airflow in our buildings, and we want to make sure we're using the right air filters. So we're working with our mechanical engineers, and we'll have that in place also in the fall. We have, as Deanna mentioned, hand sanitizing stations and containers in every classroom and every commons area. where, physical distancing is difficult, but that will be available. And anyone who, does not have a face covering, we will provide that. But as Deanna mentioned, I know with my children, they have their favorites and they want to make sure they fit properly, and all faces are different sizes. So that was sort of the high level view of transportation, really the operations, transportation, food service, and our disinfecting plans for the coming fall. Thank you.
Thanks, Kyle. And we just wanted to make sure families knew as well that we are confident that 85, 90-minute block of time between cohort A and cohort B is ample time for us to sanitize classrooms. It is part of that requirement in phase 4 that we do that every 4 hours. This works very well and with the schedule in order to make sure it's safe for the second cohort to enter the building. We have a plan for Cloud Care so that students in Cloud Care AM would move to a different room to eat their lunch. They would not intermix with the students in Cloud Care B. They'll have their own space, and we'll rotate them around and sanitize that as well. So we have that plan in place. We really are trying to make sure that we have students that have limited contact, but certainly with face coverings that will help as well with kids outside their classroom. And we have a good plan to make sure things are sanitized and safe, and we have limited exposure as best we possibly can when you're bringing the number of students that we are into the building daily. So thank you. And if you've not completed that transportation survey, it closes on Friday. We need you to do that. That really hinges many decisions that Mr. Scrivo is going to talk about now as we begin to talk about cohorts and all of the things that our principals are being asked to consider and plan for, and to put this giant puzzle together. So Mr. Scrivo, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Hello again. So I've received, and I'm speaking for all the administrators that are on this webinar right now, we have all received requests for when students can and if they could be allowed to come in the AM or PM cohort. Though we would always love to make every accommodation happen for every single reason that we are given. And most of us have pretty large hearts and we want to make things work pretty well. Because really that's just an easier way to run businesses, and we are in customer service. Unfortunately, moving forward at this time, all right, not forever, but at this time, we have to take into consideration transportation, Cloud Care, siblings at multiple buildings, and trying to make that work, breaking up cohort A and cohort B in really, the best way we could do it was breaking it up in the alphabet and taking certain letters of the alphabet in the first half of the day and then taking the second half of the alphabet in the later half of the day. Most of our requests are coming for the AM, which is common. If anyone's ever been with half-day kindergarten, every parent wanted the AM back in the day when we offered that. And it doesn't surprise us. It does kind of work with this within the system, but parents, I'm asking you to be patient with us as we put these schedules together. We will take all things into consideration, but first and foremost, we have to look at the transportation, who's coming at what time, on what bus. We have to look at who's signed up for Cloud Care, at what time, is it AM, is it PM? We have to look at where the siblings are at. And in reality, we have to do this in the next 2 weeks. So we're going to be working very hard to come out with a schedule of when your students and what cohort they are going to be in. And we want to promise you a date, but we also want to have some flexibility. But we know we can get this done by the week of the August 17th. That's our timeline. That's the goal we're shooting for. And with Kyle's help and with transportation's help and with the 5 elementary principals, as well as the 3 to 4 middle school administrators, we're going to get it done, and we'll have that to you momentarily. But I want you to know, please, if you have concerns or there is something that you need to ask us, please email us directly. We will take those things into consideration. But as I said before, we're going to do that after we look at transportation, Cloud Care, siblings, and doing what's best for kids. That's the basis of this entire plan, is to keep kids safe, keep our teachers safe, keep ourselves safe, but continue to give those kids the education that they need. and we know it needs to be in person. So we want to do that as safely as we possibly can.
Thank you. I want to just add too, transportation, cloud care, siblings, and limiting the number of students to no more than 15 per room. And so that also is a consideration. So we might have a large number of families who want AM, but we can't necessarily accommodate because we have to have 15 or less students per room. So that also plays in a factor. I also want to be clear about the timeline. That is simply letting you know whether it's going to be cohort A or cohort B, not teacher or not schedule. That will not come until the week before school starts, because as you can imagine, we're trying to staff. We have teachers who are determining whether or not they're going to come back or they're moving to Lakers Online. We just have we have hiring to do. There's just a lot of moving pieces with all this. So what we're shooting for is early the week of the 17th. We will let you know whether you're on cohort A or cohort B. We will make sure you know that week whether you're an A or B, but you will not get teacher placement that week necessarily, nor will you get your class schedule at the middle school. So I don't want to overpromise that that's what's going to happen. You're not going to know that this is my first grade teacher or this is what my daily schedule is at Orchard Lake Middle School as a 7th grader. You will not know that. At the same time, you know the cohort. You will just know whether you're attending AM or PM, and then very soon after, we'll get that specific scheduling information to you and teacher placement to you. But that will not happen at the same time. I know that Jim said, and I appreciate our always willingness to work with families and to be as accommodating as possible. Just be clear, just because you send an email, right? We can't guarantee that that's what you're going to get. And please be kind to the principals. Again, they're working on all these factors and they're trying to make this work for you. And everybody has a reason why they need what they need. And I'm sure they're all valid, but quite honestly, we have so many constraints that we're working within that it's not our principal's fault if it doesn't work. And so please be kind and be gentle. They've had a long summer. And so it is good to certainly express what you'd like, but understand that we cannot accommodate probably every request. So we want to be clear about that as well. And then we have just a couple final thoughts to wrap things up before we go. So Sally, if you'd like to start this. Or not. So I'll jump in.
I'm sorry. I was on mute. Sorry. I was talking away. No one could hear me. Sorry. We've been working tirelessly, like we've, been saying with our C2C teams, and we're really grateful for all the work that they've done. And we are going to continue to work. We have a meeting right after this, another one at 2 and throughout the day to monitor what our governor is saying with her communication, and we're going to adjust and pivot and our plans as we need to. Please look for those updates. We know we're sending a lot to you in your email, but keep reading them. They're really important just to let you know what we're doing at the building level and at the district level. Again, as we said, don't hesitate to ask questions. Our websites have all our emails there, so please email us and contact us and we'll get back with you. We're doing what we can, the best. Safety is number one. Getting the students back face to face, those relationships are very important. So we're working very, very hard to do it. Don't forget your Canvas training. That's on August 20th at 7. That's very important to help out with those half-day sessions, and on the Wednesday session, to look at that new format because it is a little bit different than Google, but you're going to be very happy with it. It's a much easier, learner-friendly. And the Lakers Online Family Orientation, if you're interested in knowing more about that, is August 13th, or if you've signed up, or August 13th at 10 and 6. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Drummond. So you also are going to see very shortly that we have an updated technology schedule for you as well. I just got the email. So if you have siblings, we're not going to ask that you come 3 times to the high school. If your kids are in 3 different buildings, you can choose the time that works best for you and pick up all 3 devices at the same time. It is touchless. So you'll wear a mask, you'll pull up in the loop at the high school. You'll give them your ID. They will give you the devices in a bag, and you'll take them home. So you don't get out of your car. You don't interact with anybody other than the one person, our employee, who will also be masked. So we wanted you to know that as well. So there will be a technology update sending out very, very shortly with some additional information and clarification around that as well. We want to thank you for your time today. I know you feel like you've probably done nothing but listen to all of us, particularly me, talk about what's going to happen in the fall. I want to give kudos to our principals and to the teaching and learning team and to Kyle for their time today and their efforts. This has been a Herculean task to try to figure out the best way to get students kindergarten through 8th grade back into the building for as much instruction as possible while keeping in mind safety and health first. And so we know that it has been a frustrating process for some of you, that it is one of those things that we would like nothing more than to go back to really March 9th, as I joked last night in the high school webinar, when all we were mad about was Dr. Hill not calling a snow day the week before. Do you remember that? And back in the good old days. And now here we are. We haven't been back in school since March the 13th. And we're contemplating what the start of the school is going to look like. And it's going to be vastly different than what any of us could have imagined when we started school last August. But I want you to know that we are very fortunate to have the team that we have that has talked to you today, the teachers in the classroom, really our food service, our custodial staff, our transportation drivers, and our team members who want to do what we can to provide high quality instruction and a safe environment for your kids. We feel very fortunate to be in West Bloomfield, to be in a district that supports this level of innovation, this level of planning, this level of really making sure that what we're doing is best for our kids and for our staff. So thank you as parents for tuning in again. Again, if you have questions, especially building specific questions, please send those to your principals. If there's something that they can't answer, then they'll reach out to either us, to myself, or to Kyle or to Eric Whitney to get those answered and to get back with you in a timely fashion. We hope you have a great rest of your day and look forward to having some more communication with you as we get closer to the start of the school year. Thanks again.